While it might seem like a sleepy little town made prosperous by its location along the tradeway across the Sword Coast and beyond, the town of Beregost has more than its fair share of secrets, and occasionally, most unexpectedly, and so close to home, it presents unusual perils. I'd barely set out on my journey to the south when I ran into one of the most dangerous encounters I'd ever faced, and I was not prepared. Around mid-afternoon, I arrived at Beregost from the west, walking on foot with the purple-robed, avowed priest Sprig, Summerfoot, a hin and a good friend of mine. We had covered the road between Candlekeep and Beregost so many times I barely even watched where we were going, and we were already deep in conversation about what we might be eating for supper when we got within sight of the first outlying buildings. The sun was still up and would be for some hours yet, but there was a chill to the air. The last lingering claws of winter robbed the sun of its strength, and there were still banks of snow here and there under evergreen trees, steep banks, and the occasional cart bridge over a creek. Sprig and I walked barefoot, of course. I could handle it well enough in springtime on a fairly nice cart track, but I was nowhere near as leather-footed as Sprig and had my sturdy travelling boots slung over my shoulder. My first hint that something was not right was a mounted man in armour carrying a shield and lance. That stopped Sprig and I in our tracks as soon as he caught sight of us. The man spurred his charger and trotted over to confront us. Nothing threatening, he was really just interested in warning us not to be travelling the wilds alone on foot. There were attacks lately on livestock, and although no people had yet been harmed, it was clear some sort of large predator was hunting the area, as many livestock had been found torn to bits and partially devoured. I asked what livestock, fearing the worst. Sheep, he said, and my heart sank. Beregost had for many years supplied Candlekeep with all of the fine wool robes that the Avowed wore, including the very fine white robes of the Keeper of Tomes, currently worn by Archmage Janusi, taking over from Archmage Ulrunt, who had been spending a lot of time in other dimensions, or so I'd been told. Sprig and I decided on the spot that it was most certainly of concern to Candlekeep and should be investigated. So we set off to Crawford Farmstead, the largest supplier of fleece in the town. The Crawfords were all up on the rooftops of the various buildings and sheds on their property with loaded crossbows, and they were scared. This family had seen a lot. They were used to defending their flocks and sheepdogs from all sorts of predators, including thieves. But whatever this latest one was, clearly nothing they had seen before, and looking up at them, I felt suddenly quite concerned about being on foot down on the ground. My first thought was that it must be some creature, either of the air or it was attacking from below, like the great big ankhegs that sometimes get plucky enough to come this close to the township. But no, ankhegs were something this family had dealt with before, and they were not peering up into the sky for some swooping terror. They were watching Sprig and I approach and waving at us to get our asses up on the roof with as much haste as we could muster. You didn't need to tell us that twice. Old Man Crawford, who had only one eye and was not much good with a crossbow at range, related what had been going on and shared a bowl of hot rosemary mutton stew with feta cheese and a farm loaf bread with us. We'd hardly finished our meal when a blood-curdling scream sounded from the rooftop closest to the paddock holding most of the remaining sheep. Both Sprig and I were over there so fast, one could almost believe we once ran for our lives over the steep and slick rooftop shingles of Arabar from bloodthirsty pirates. But that's another story for Sprig to tell. I was looking down at a gruesome sight. Something big, slick, fast, and purple had chomped down on a sheep in a spray of blood and was dragging the mewling animal backwards into some sort of a misty funnel suspended just off the ground. The beast walked on two legs, had no arms that I could see, and its head seemed to flow directly out of its body. My first thought was of the sketches of fast-running thunderbeasts and ferocious hippos I'd seen in a book about the jungle wildlife of Chult, but this was no raptor. It just moved like one and balanced its powerful jaws with a somewhat rigid tail behind it. Over top of the noise from the agonized sheep that was quickly dying, the rest of the bleating flock, and the screaming farm girl next to me, and the barking oaths of Sprig, there was this ululating wail coming from the creature. Two sharp, thumping twangs from heavy crossbows, and I saw a pair of bolts slam into the monster. It spat out the sheep and almost fell backward into its misty portal, and for a moment I thought we'd beaten it. Then out of nowhere, two more of the damn things popped out of the air. This time they ignored the sheep and advanced on us. I didn't know this at the time, but this was an unusual situation that I was thankfully well prepared for. Well, or at least Sprig was. You see, not only did Sprig have a mind packed full of delicious, complex and seasonal recipes, Sprig was also a highly skilled alchemist, having collected, studied and tested many, many rare books on the subject, with all sorts of weird plants, animals and minerals in urns, jars, pots and cages lining every wall of their chambers with shelves stacked in oddities. When Sprig flipped open a leather quiver full of carefully arranged, handcrafted and well-protected crossbow bolts and loaded it swiftly into a hand crossbow, this was actually the first time I was to witness the techniques of Cadalie Bonadus in action. And yes, Sprig also had some spindle discs for close-range combat. I'd seen those in action, and trust me, they're far more formidable than they appear. The hand crossbow took rough aim, more a ballistic shot than anything, and it sailed up and came down between the two beasts. Then there was this thundering boom, a punching shockwave, and the turf plumed out in a perfect circle with clods of it raining down from quite a height. Staggered and stunned, the two creatures veered off away from the explosive crossbow bolt and presented their flanks to the heavy crossbow shots from the rooftops. These ones did not retreat out of phase with the world like the first one did. They were not dead yet, but they were no longer any great danger. Sprig was wide-eyed at the result of the blast and must have been thinking that more padding was required on the hip quiver packed with more of those bolts. I did mention that Cadalie carried his on a bandolier belt. Ah well, they worked, and without a puff of smoke powder. The first creature did not return that night, but I foolishly thought that we'd seen the last of it. We had not. I learned later that they are called Ethereal Marauders. But based on the way that the survivor tracked us for days and attacked us again and again when we were least expecting it, tired, injured, and far from Beregost, seriously wounding poor Sprig, I would have named them ethereal stalkers or assassins or something. That wailing sound and those three fanged jaws darting out of the sudden fog of the border ethereal plane is very frightening in person, especially when you're not expecting them. It turns out that while one usually encounters ethereal marauders on their own, we had encountered a mated trio of them. Mating triplets gather once every couple of years, and we were very lucky to be up on those rooftops because they trio are very good at flanking their victims. One will spook the prey, and then the other two will pick individuals as they scatter and run in different directions. If you think of the hunting tactics of a velociraptor and then add in the ability to shift between the ethereal plane and back again, you can see how they are very, very good at ambush hunting. They'll also patiently wait for their prey to be sleeping soundly around a campfire before they launch a deadly attack. And in those instances, they do it silently and pick off one member of a group at a time. It was 3 days before we saw that first marauder again, so they're very patient hunters and move easily through the border ethereal plane. I can imagine if Sprig and I had any reason to suspect that it was there, using magic to see into that ghostly realm, it still would have given us severe heebie-jeebies to see the damn thing right by us that whole time, watching us and picking its moment. Even badly injured, a marauder that knows its prey can't cross over after it into the ethereal plane will continue to track and attack, even if it is just to inflict one wound and then withdraw for a while. This tactic puts its prey at serious risk of succumbing to other threats or becoming unable to defend themselves due to infection or just exhaustion from the pain and lack of rest. It's the same tactic human hunters used to become the super predators we evolved into, tirelessly jogging along after their prey, throwing rocks and wearing it down until eventually it collapses and we close in as a group for the kill. There is a very deadly reason why humans can run marathons. Our bodies cooled by our sweat. We might not be faster than any other running animals, but we can inevitably outrun any other creature on the face of the planet. And that is pretty damn scary. Ethereal marauders have multiple sets of lungs and emit a wailing, whining sound, as I mentioned. The pitch starts off high, but lowers noticeably as the creatures become injured or fatigued. My investigation revealed that they have multiple lungs, but I'm not sure if that is the reason for the noise. They don't have a neck. Their torso includes a gaping maw surrounded by 3 powerful mandibles. Gleaming jet black teeth line the inner mouth, and 3 small red eyes surround the maw, one eye between each set of the mandibles. For the marauder, shifting between the two planes is simply a partial movement action, so they can move to attack and then fade away immediately each round. They do tend to linger on the material plane when they sense they're close to killing or incapacitating their prey. Also, when they're working as a trio, they tend to stay and attack one target in an attempt to overwhelm, grapple, and drag the dead victim away, combining their strength, which makes them more vulnerable for just a few moments. However, the creatures are smart enough to move around quickly, phasing in and out. In doing so, they make it hard to figure out exactly how many are attacking. One careful study has revealed that almost never more than 3 are there unless very large numbers of them are in a particular region, drawn there for some reason. Thankfully, marauders cannot take living creatures with them when they cross between the ethereal and material planes. They can only take dead creatures. Otherwise, they'd be far more deadly. Mature, highly experienced marauder trios instead perform fast, stuttering attacks, which makes it seem like one creature is teleporting around very quickly and attacking many times per round. The ability to see into the invisible, or anything that reveals ghosts or incorporeal creatures, will work on Marauders. Unfortunately, stopping their ability to cross between the planes is much more difficult in 5th edition D&D. Private Sanctum is a 4th level spell, a wizard spell, formerly Mordenkainen's Private Sanctum, but it seems likely that Wizard of the Coast is doing away with named spells in order to prevent having to reprint the spell as a different version for every campaign setting. Magic the Gathering settings, for example, which is a bit of a blow to the history of the game itself, but I can see why it's a good idea for them as a publisher. The problem with Private Sanctum is that it takes 10 minutes to cast, which is useless for a surprise attack, but handy if one knows one's being hunted by Marauders and just wants a 24-hour break from getting dimensionally ambushed. Clerics can cast Forbiddance, a 6th level spell, a superior spell that can also kill Marauders who dare enter the protected area by conventional means, but it costs 1,000 gold worth of spell components and also takes 10 minutes to cast. Also note that 5th edition no longer allows magic missile to target creatures in the border ethereal plane, so firing them off a Marauder as it crosses over is no longer a viable tactic. They still can't pass through living creatures or walls of force though. If your magic user can see in the Marauder, even if it's on the border ethereal plane and appears as a ghostly monster, the 5th level spell Hold Monster is just as effective at causing paralysis. We have several sets of homebrew stat blocks for the Ethereal Marauder on the D&D Beyond website. They all seem to agree that a medium-sized and high animal intelligence creature with a natural armor class of 14 or 15 and around 60 hit points. They have a speed of 40 feet per round and a +1 to initiative rolls, +3 to stealth and +3 to perception skill checks. A typical Marauder will have a strength of 14, dexterity of 12, constitution of 11, intelligence of 7, wisdom of 12 and a charisma of 10. They can use an ethereal jaunt as a bonus action or reaction, and their bite is +4 to hit a target within 5 feet, inflicting up to 4d10 +4 piercing damage. You may want to give them the ability to grapple with their bite attack, not to drag them into the ethereal plane, which is not possible, but to leave the victim open to attacks from different directions, including other Marauders. The Ethereal Marauder's coloration ranges from bright blue to deep violet. They stand about 4 feet tall, but their overall length is 7 feet, so they weigh about 200 pounds or so. There is a very rich ecosystem of alien life forms which have become native to the ethereal plane, so it's common to find Marauders that are also infested with parasites, or are actually hunting creatures that have become attracted to Magical's planar spells and effects on the primaterial plane. Marauders tend to steer well clear of blink dogs, and they also don't hunt dragons unless they have no other food sources available. Dragons tend to be able to wipe the floor with Marauders even from a relatively young age, as Marauders have a hard time dealing with flying prey. Also, they don't swim very well at all and avoid going into the water. They are very good at hunting creatures in the Underdark, as they have the ability to pass through walls and difficult terrain with ease in an ethereal state. If you are ever wanting a quick and easy set of stats for them, just modify the stat block for a crocodile. Give them an ethereal jaunt bonus ability, also the power to see into the ethereal plane and a 40-foot movement rate. Easy peasy. Obviously, physical components from these monsters are highly valued in the creations of ethereal plane related magic items, potions and such. The black fangs are the most potent and also look really cool as a necklace. My name is AJ Pickett. I make videos about role-playing games and uploading deeply nerdy content for you every few days. By the way, I've got some new merch, a deeply nerdy shirt, and also a grab yourself a tasty beverage t-shirt if you want to support the channel that way. Link down below. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.